And this is his elaborate looking mausoleum. And we can see down the bottom there is a very big hole on that area, so hopefully we might try and have a look inside. Hi guys, and welcome back to the channel. So I am here today in Sligo Cemetery, and we're going to go inside and read some interesting old graves and burial vaults in the older section of the cemetery. So as we enter the cemetery here, we can see the old gatehouse. Now this gatehouse and the surrounding walls of the cemetery were donated by the Wynne family, who were a very wealthy family in the Sligo area. And I suppose we can have a look inside. There's restoration work going on at the moment in the old gatehouse. So we can see one of the old doors that were part of it there. And the gatehouse, I suppose, would have been an area to document who was coming in and out of the cemetery and, you know, keep an eye on people back in the day as well, body snatchers and stuff that was going on. So the first vault I'm going to go to is the one directly in the center of your screen. And that is the burial vault of Noblet St. Ledger. He was a county surveyor for Sligo for 35 years. And he was chief engineer for Sligo Corporation from 1848 until his death, and responsible for the efficient new sewer system laid out between 1850 and 1872. He's buried here with his wife, who passed away in 1897, and their only child, Hayward, who died in infancy. So it is a very stylish looking burial vault with that kind of a pyramid effect on the very top of it there. So here we can see this is erected by his widow in affectionate remembrance of Noblet Rogers St. Ledger, son of Hayward St. Ledger of Hayward Hill, County Cork, county surveyor of Sligo for a period of 36 years. He died suddenly on April the 8th, 1872. And there's a lot of growth on top of the tomb, we can see there. And this would be the door entrance to that tomb. We can see the old iron rings, and they would be lifted away. All the entrance to that, the coffin would be put inside. So a very interesting one, and an interesting man, I suppose, involved. And I think he was involved actually as well in a lot of work along the quays in County Sligo. He would have built a lot of the old jetties and quays along the waterway. Right, so there is a number of graves in the cemetery here that I am looking for. And as we can see, that was the St. Ledger one there I was talking to you about. And the other grave I'm looking for is just here, and this is the Wynne family who are buried here. So buried here is Owen Wynne, and it was actually this family who paid for the gatehouse we seen coming in there, and the walls, etc., here around the cemetery. So Owen's wife, Stella, she was killed when she fell off a horse coming from service. The horse bolted. She fell, hit her head, and she was with her maid at the time. She lived for 3 days and unfortunately passed away. And she was the aunt of Countess Markovich. And Countess Markovich was involved in the War of Independence. And she's buried in Glasnevin Cemetery in Dublin. So there we have the story of the Wynne family. And just there, the second one on your left is Owen Wynne of Hazelwood, who died in 1910, November the 21st. And I did try to look at the one on the left, but the inscription is very worn away on it. So I believe that his wife, Stella, is also buried in the family plot here. So they had 4 daughters, and the family dynasty died out. So really she passed away without having any sons, just 4 daughters, and she was tragically killed falling off that horse, which I suppose we've heard of before back in the day, accidents on horses and on people's lands and stuff like that. So rest in peace to the Wynne family. And look at that tree. Beautiful looking. So it's a rather large cemetery here in Sligo, and we can see those beautiful mountains as we walk down there in the background. So I believe the other grave I'm looking for is just around the corner here. And it's the grave of Patrick Dunbar. And there's a little story, a tragic story behind this one. And we'll talk about that now as we visit his grave. So it's this grave just in here on your left. And it's Patrick Dunbar. So Patrick Dunbar was the first man to be killed on an official picket line. He was a member of Transport Workers Union. A fight among Union and Scabs broke out. Patrick was hit on the head with a shovel and bled to death on the quay here in County Sligo. So this is the grave of Patrick. And as we can see on the headstone here, in memory of Patrick Dunbar, who was killed while on strike for union recognition on Sligo docks on the 26th of March 1913. So this was erected to commemorate his sacrifice by the SIPTU Sligo District Committee. So very sad to think that, you know, when you hear of union workers and strikes and all that kind of stuff that goes on in the world, this poor guy was married with 2 children at the time of his death, Patrick, and unfortunately got wrapped up in this argument that happened on the docks in Sligo and passed away, struck with a shovel in the back of the head. and bled to death. So rest in peace, Patrick Dunbar. So I have a couple of graves on my list that I wanted to find, but not just those, but we will be looking at other ones as we wander around the cemetery here also. So this is a vault. There are those rings where the coffin would go inside. So this is the vault of Alderman Higgins, who died at St. Helens, Sligo, the 9th of July, 1902, age 61. Also his daughter, Minnie Higgins, and she died in 1902, age 20 years old. So it's a big obelisk style. And his wife, Mary Agnes, she died in 1931, age 79 years old. But it is a fine vaulted gravesite. Right, guys, so we're back on track here again. And here we have a beautiful statue here in loving memory of Honora Golden, who died the 9th of October 1902, and Joseph Golden. Now, the other interesting grave I'm looking for here, and it's around this area here, I can find it. I was looking at photos of the graves, and it's very, very interesting. And it's the grave here of the Doherty family. So this grave here is in memory of Elizabeth Crawford O'Brien. Elizabeth Crawford Cribben, first love and wife of Henry Doherty Esquire, and their son Joseph, and his three sons Michael, Colonel Henry J. Doherty, and Captain Edward Doherty. Now that name is what we will be talking about today, the Captain Edward Doherty. The brave avenger of President Lincoln, and their youngest daughter, Catherine Theresa, and to the memory of their eldest daughter, Mary Ann Elizabeth Doherty. So the story behind this is the two sons are noted here on the headstone. Now, they're not actually buried here. They're buried in the United States in America. And his name was Edward Doherty, Captain Edward Doherty. So when Abraham Lincoln was shot by John Wilkes Booth in 1864, Doherty was in charge of the unit of 25 men who were sent to capture Wilkes Booth. So Wilkes Booth, as we know, was on the run, and he was down around Virginia, I think, in the United States, and went into an old barn to hide out there. So Captain Doherty and his men went down to this barn. Wilkes Booth was asked to hand himself in. He wouldn't come out of the old barn, so they set a match to the barn to set it on fire, and Wilkes Booth came running out, the man who assassinated Abraham Lincoln. And when he was running out of the barn, he was shot dead. Now, they say that Captain Doherty, whose name is mentioned on this headstone, shot dead Wilkes Booth. But it's written on the headstone here, and I will show you the inscription a bit better. But you can see down the bottom of the gravestone here, we have the American flag. So people have noted that. But look at those words. The brave avenger of President Lincoln, Captain Edward P. Doherty. Now, Captain Doherty is buried in Arlington Cemetery. So that's where he's buried, and I'll put a photo of his grave over the video as well. But what a great story that his parents are buried here. The man they captured, the assassin who killed the American president, Abraham Lincoln, his family are buried here in County Sligo. Very, very interesting. So lots of history there. And we'll make our way back out. So there you go, guys. More interesting information here in this cemetery walk. That grave there connected to the whole story of Abraham Lincoln, his assassination in the theatre. He was shot there, and Captain Doherty rounded up a cavalry back then of all these men to go and capture John Wilkes Booth. So we'll make our way, and we'll keep going around. There's one or two more graves I want to find while I'm here. Now, if you want, there is a story down this direction here, and I won't be covering it. Serenity Sue is with me here today also, and she will be covering a different section of the cemetery, and I'll be doing my own graves and my own kind of areas around here as well. But if we look at this very elaborate looking mausoleum, there is a very, very interesting story about this one. And the O'Connor Mausoleum. So if you want to know more about what happened in this story that's connected to this mausoleum, check out Serenity Sue, her channel. She will be covering that one. So we have come across a grave here, a war casualty. And this is sacred to the memory of Joseph Adair, Lisburn, County Antrim, who died the 29th of December 1920. Also his brother, Commandant Sean Adair, National Army, killed in ambush at Rockwood, County Sligo, on the 13th of July 1922. A Celtic cross. And we have a beautiful photograph here of Sean. We have another old vault there, kind of covered over. And we can see the ivy actually on it, how it's grown into the side of it, the areas of the burial vault. But look at this one. We have a beautiful angel with the wings. We have another angel just on the other side. So we can see there was railings around this gravesite, and they're gone. We have the urn on top. So we'll read this. And this is in memory of James Martin. And it says, accidentally killed in a fall from his horse in 1862, aged 50 maybe. It's kind of hard to read it. 55 or 35 years old. Also, his youngest son, Fraser, drowned on his passage from St. John's to Boston in the US, January 1863, maybe, aged 17 years old. So very, very tragic here. We have a man who was killed accidentally from a fall from his horse. And then his youngest son, Fraser, who drowned on his way to Boston at age only 17. So I suppose it's always important to read, the ones that kind of stick out, the beautiful monuments. And sometimes it's important to read these graves and not walk past them, because you just don't know what you're going to see on the inscription. And that is one example of it, just there. So this is in memory of their beloved children, Mary Taylor, who died in Sligo. 1878, aged 4 years and 4 months. Right, so the next story and the next burial place we're going to do is the burial vault down here of Benjamin Morrow, or Morrow. And his vault was built in 1928. So Benjamin collected rent for the Wynne family. The Wynnes owned lots of property in the town here in Sligo. And then the Wynne family died out, but he kept collecting rent, made lots of money on properties that was not his even. So can you imagine? He was collecting rent for these families, the Wynnes. And even though the family died out, he still kept collecting rent and had a very fancy looking house in Sligo here. And I will put a photograph of that. He had cannons in his back garden and a kind of a castle style wall around his garden area in the house. And this is his elaborate looking mausoleum. So hopefully we'll be able to see what's on it. So it's a loving memory of my dear loved husband, Benjamin Morrow, who departed this life the 27th of October 1936. So that was his name on that. And we have other family members here. Ella Longdale Stewart, who passed away in 1968, beloved sister of the families and daughter of the late Benjamin. So that is the door to his mausoleum. And we can see down the bottom there is a very big hole on that area. So hopefully we might try and have a look inside and see what we can see inside there. Would be interesting. The family name, Morrow, over the door. Right guys, so I'm going to try and have a look inside. So that's what it looks like inside. Now, I don't see anything there, unless up above we have the coffins up above there. There's a kind of a piece of timber in there. It looks like a frame of a picture or something in there. I don't know. Right guys, so the other grave I am looking for, I found it just here. Excuse me snuffling, but it is very cold here today. So this is the grave I'm looking for here, and it's the grave of Liz McGlynn. She was a nurse in the First World War in England, and she was aboard the MS Leinster that was torpedoed just outside of Dunleary in Dublin. She died due to being torpedoed, as I was saying. So there was a number of bodies found from that ship, and they were laid out on the quay in Dunleary, and a lot of those bodies were recovered. And her brother actually went up to Dunleary to identify her body and brought her home to be buried in the cemetery here in Sligo. So I'll try and read what it says. So this is erected by Mrs. McGlynn in memory of her sons, Patrick McGlynn, who died July, aged 20 years. And just down the bottom here then, we have her daughter Lizzie McGlynn, who died the 10th of October 1918, and she was only 20 years old. So that is the grave of the nurse. So rest in peace. The rain is coming down very heavy here, guys, so I have to get out of here. So I want to say thank you for watching the video. If you liked the video, give it a big thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. And I'll see you all in the next adventure. I'm getting soaked here.